Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd be the type to get into a war with my HOA, but here we are. This whole mess started about 2 years ago when I bought my house in what I thought would be a quiet neighborhood. I'm a consultant who travels a lot for work, so I wanted somewhere I could come home and just relax in peace. The neighborhood itself is pretty standard. Cookie-cutter houses, manicured lawns, the usual suburban setup. But my house was different, and that's exactly why I picked it. See, my property backs up to a nature preserve, which means no neighbors behind me and total privacy. The previous owner had installed this amazing pool setup. We're talking a custom kidney-shaped pool with a waterfall feature, built-in spa, and professional landscaping around it. The whole backyard was fenced with 8-foot privacy fencing. It was like having my own private resort. The community pool, on the other hand, was just a basic rectangular thing that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. I paid premium for this house specifically because of that pool and the privacy. The HOA fees were steep. We're talking $400 a month, but I figured it was worth it since I'd have access to all the community amenities too, even though I knew I'd probably never use them. That's where she comes in, the HOA president. Picture the most stereotypical HOA power tripper you can imagine, and you've got her perfectly. This woman was probably around 50, and you could tell she'd been attractive in high school and was still trying to relive those glory days. She had this whole uniform, khaki shorts, polo shirt, sun visor, and always carrying a clipboard. I swear she measured grass with a ruler. The trouble started small. About 3 months after I moved in, I found my first note taped to my front door. It was typed up on official HOA letterhead and said something about my pool filter being a bit loud and asking me to be considerate of the community. The thing is, my pool equipment was top of the line and barely made any noise. Plus, the nearest neighbor was a good 50 feet away with 2 fences between us. But whatever, I figured it was just her establishing dominance. Then she started cornering me. The first time was when I was getting my mail after work. She came power walking over with her clipboard like she was on some kind of mission. She told me that any major backyard improvements needed to be reviewed by the board to make sure they fit community standards. The pool had been there for 5 years before I bought the house, and the HOA had approved it back then, but she kept implying it was somehow a problem now. The weird comments really started at the mandatory monthly HOA meetings. These things were basically just her holding court in the community center, going over rules and complaints. But she kept talking about underutilized assets and sharing community resources. Every time she said it, she'd look right at me. It was creepy, but I just assumed she was your typical busybody who didn't like that I kept to myself. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. She was always asking neighbors about my travel schedule. When I'd come back from business trips, she'd make comments about how quiet my house had been. I thought she was just being nosy, but she was actually gathering intelligence. The breaking point came last summer when I had to fly to the West Coast for a week-long conference. This was a big client presentation, and I'd been preparing for months. My house was completely secure, all the gates were locked, security system armed, and I had cameras covering every angle of the property. I'd invested in a pretty serious setup after some break-ins in the area. I was 3 days into the trip, sitting in a client meeting, when my phone started buzzing with security alerts. At first I ignored it. Sometimes the system would trigger if a delivery truck parked too close to the driveway sensor, but it kept going off, so during a break I pulled up the live camera feed on my phone. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My backyard, my private, locked backyard was absolutely packed with people. We're talking at least 40 strangers, adults, teenagers, little kids. It looked like a neighborhood block party, except it was happening in my yard. The HOA president was right there in the middle of it all, lounging in my expensive teak patio chair like she owned the place. She had a sun hat on and was drinking something out of one of my own glasses that she'd apparently taken from my patio bar. Kids were doing cannonballs into my pool, splashing water all over my custom stone decking. Some guy I'd never seen before was using my gas grill, cooking burgers like he lived there. But what really made my blood boil was seeing my back gate propped wide open. The lock had been cut clean through with bolt cutters. This wasn't some innocent mistake. This was planned, deliberate trespassing. I watched on my phone screen as some teenager dropped a beer bottle, and it shattered on my patio stones. That's when I called the police. I dialed the non-emergency line for my town and explained the situation. I told them I was the property owner, I was out of state, and there was a mass trespassing situation in progress at my home with dozens of unauthorized people on my property. The dispatcher said they'd send someone right away. I couldn't focus on the rest of my meetings. I kept checking the camera feed, watching these strangers trash my property. The HOA president was actually giving some kind of speech to the crowd at one point, gesturing around like she was showing off her own backyard. By the time the police arrived about 45 minutes later, I watched the whole thing unfold on my cameras. 2 patrol cars pulled up and the officers walked around to the backyard. I could see the HOA president talking to them, waving her arms around and pointing at things. The cops were taking notes, but they weren't arresting anyone. After about 20 minutes, everyone started packing up and leaving. I called the police department afterward to find out what happened. The officer I spoke to said the woman claimed it was an official HOA community event, and that she believed the pool was a community asset that all residents should have access to. He told me it was being treated as a civil matter since no one was still on the property when they arrived. I cut my business trip short and flew home the next morning. The damage was worse than I'd imagined. My pool was a disaster. There were food wrappers floating in it, along with beer cans and what looked like someone's lost swimsuit. The pool filter was completely clogged with trash and other things I don't want to think about. My patio furniture was stained with food and drinks, and there were cigarette butts ground into my outdoor carpet. The gate lock was completely destroyed, hanging there in pieces. The fence itself was damaged too. Someone had apparently tried to widen the opening and bent the chain link out of shape. There were footprints in my flower beds and trash scattered all over my yard. I took pictures of everything and called my insurance company, but they said vandalism and trespassing damage wasn't covered unless there was a police report with charges filed. Since the cops had treated it as a civil matter, I was on my own. The cleanup and repairs cost me almost $8,000. New pool equipment, professional pool cleaning, fence repair, gate replacement, furniture cleaning. It all added up fast. But the money wasn't even the worst part. It was the violation of privacy, the complete disrespect for my property and my rights. I got a copy of the police report, and reading it made me even angrier. The HOA president had told the officers that I was being selfish with community resources and that she was helping facilitate neighborhood unity. She actually claimed that because I paid HOA dues, my pool was somehow partly owned by the community. Armed with the police report and my repair bills, I decided to pay her a visit. She lived just 4 streets over in one of the smaller houses, apparently being HOA president didn't pay as well as she thought it should. When I rang her doorbell, she answered in her usual uniform, polo shirt, khaki shorts, and that stupid visor. The moment she saw me, her whole demeanor changed. Instead of looking guilty or apologetic, she got defensive. I told her I had the police report and the repair bills and that she needed to pay for the damage from her unauthorized party. She crossed her arms and glared at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. She said I was being incredibly selfish and that so many children in the neighborhood would love to use that pool. She went on about how when you live in an HOA, you agree to be part of a community and share resources for the greater good. I told her again that she needed to pay for the damages, and that's when she completely lost it. She started screaming that I couldn't award resources, that my pool was practically a community pool anyway. Then she yelled the line that still makes my blood pressure spike. That's my pool, not our pool, not the community's pool, my pool, like she personally owned my property.
She wasn't just entitled. She was completely delusional. She genuinely believed she had the right to break into my home and claim my property as her own. The police had called it a civil matter, which meant the law wasn't going to help me get justice. I realized I'd have to get creative. I hired a lawyer and sent a certified letter to the HOA board demanding payment for the damages and formally notifying them of the trespassing incident. I figured maybe the rest of the board would be more reasonable than their president. Boy, was I wrong. 2 weeks later, I got an official response from the HOA board. Not only did they refuse to pay for any damages, but they actually had the nerve to formally censure me for hostile behavior toward community leadership and failure to embrace community resource sharing. They were doubling down on the crazy. That's when I got mad. Really mad. This wasn't just about one power-hungry neighbor anymore. This was about a hostile board that thought they could steal my property and then punish me for complaining about it. I spent the entire next weekend digging through public records online. The county assessor's website had detailed maps and ownership information for every parcel in the county. I started with my own house just to make sure I understood how to read the data, then expanded out to look at the whole neighborhood. Most of the lots were straightforward, individual homeowners with clear property lines. But when I got to the large parcel that contained the HOA clubhouse, community pool, and parking lot, something weird showed up. The owner wasn't listed as Pine Ridge Estates HOA or anything like that. It was listed as City of X Municipal Holdings. That seemed odd, so I clicked deeper into the records. That's when I found it. A 25-year land lease agreement between the city and the HOA, signed 24 years and 9 months ago. The HOA didn't own their own facilities. They were renting them from the city. My heart started racing as I checked the lease expiration date. It was in exactly 60 days. I dug deeper and found something even better.
Because it was public land, the city was required by law to post any lease renewals or property sales for public comment. I found the notice buried on the county's website. The land was scheduled for their quarterly public surplus property auction in 3 weeks. Apparently, the HOA had forgotten to file for lease renewal. Or maybe they just assumed it would automatically renew. Either way, they were about to lose everything, and they had no idea. I spent the rest of that Sunday researching municipal land auctions and real estate law. The more I learned, the more excited I got. This was perfect. But I couldn't just show up to the auction as myself. If anyone connected the purchase to me, they'd know exactly what was happening. I needed to be smart about this. First, I called my lawyer and had him set up an LLC for me. We went with something generic and professional sounding. Apex Land Management, LLC. Nothing that would connect back to me personally. Next, I researched what the land might sell for. Similar parcels in the area had gone for anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000, depending on size and location. The HOA's land was prime real estate, almost 10 acres, right in the heart of an established neighborhood. I got a cashier's check for $400,000 just to be safe. The auction was held in a boring conference room in the county building. Most of the people there were clearly developers or investment companies, guys in suits with folders full of research. Nobody from the HOA was there. They were completely clueless about what was happening. When our parcel came up, the auctioneer described it as 10.2 acres, improved with clubhouse and recreational facilities, zoned residential community. The bidding started at $50,000. A developer in the front row bid $75,000. I raised my paddle for $100,000. He went to $125,000. I went to $150,000. This went back and forth for a few rounds until I bid $225,000 and he just shook his head and dropped out. The auctioneer called going once, going twice, and I held my breath. Sold to bidder 47 Apex Land Management, LLC. I signed all the paperwork and wrote the check. Just like that, I owned the land underneath the HOA's entire operation. But here's the beautiful part. I didn't do anything with it right away. The old lease didn't expire for another 60 days, so legally the HOA still had access during that time. I just went home and waited. Those 2 months were torture, but also hilarious. The HOA president kept giving me these smug looks when she saw me around the neighborhood. At the next HOA meeting, she made some snide comments about certain residents learning to be more community-minded, and shot me looks like she'd won some kind of victory. If only she knew what was coming. I used those 60 days to plan everything perfectly. I researched fencing contractors and got quotes for securing the entire 10-acre property. I had signs made. I even researched what time the HOA usually held their monthly meetings, just to make sure I had maximum impact. The old lease officially expired on August 31st. On September 1st at 5 a.m., I was sitting in my car with a cup of coffee, watching a team of contractors unload 500 feet of 8-foot-tall industrial chain-link fencing. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I used to work at an upscale-ish cafe. I was a supervisor and in charge of the bakery section. There was also a kitchen and a coffee bar. Now Mother's Day was our biggest day of the year by a huge margin. Like it would be close to triple our daily sales for a regular Sunday. Most mid-grade holidays would also be busy. And after every big holiday sales day, the sales the next day would be around 50 to 60% of normal, so I would order about 2/3 of my regular order for that Monday. Now our owner was somewhat absentee from our store. She owned 5 locations, 4 of which were in the same city. Ours was the outlier in a smaller location about 2 hours away. She spent almost all of her time at the 4 locations and maybe visited us once a month. This month, she just happened to come on the day after Mother's Day. I can add that of all the employees, only the assistant manager liked the owner. Even the manager couldn't stand her. She saw that my bakery case was somewhat low and asked why. I explained that the day after holidays was always slower and I ordered less because I didn't want to waste money. She told me never to do that again. She in fact told me to double my normal order. Now I had been in this job for 4 years by this point, and I knew that bakery section inside and out. Also at this point, only the manager and one of the cooks had been there longer than me. Even the manager told me that things were always better when I was there. I always stayed late to cover call-ins, often came in on my day off if they needed me. I even once drove a catering delivery 90 minutes each way to satisfy a loyal customer. I told the owner that today was a special circumstance and that doubling the order would lead to a lot of food waste and recommended that we not do it. With my regular daily orders, we usually ran out only near the end of the day, barring unforeseen circumstances, like someone coming in and doing a big pastry order without notice. This was from a lot of trial and error over the years, and I changed my order up whenever things looked like they were changing.
But she insisted, even after the manager also told her that our regular order was fine. I tried again to tell, and she just told me to do it. My manager also said it by that point, so I did it. I doubled my regular order. After about 2 weeks, she emailed me and asked why we were throwing out so many pastries every day. I told her that she told me to double my order. At that point, my boss says she wanted to fire me. My boss convinced her that she needed me to help run the store, which she probably did. So I wasn't fired, but I lost my position as bakery lead. I was still a supervisor who mostly worked the bakery section, but I no longer ordered product. Still the same wage, but I was switched from mostly mornings to mostly nights. While I did miss my morning regulars, I also enjoyed making the same money for less responsibility. About 6 months later, the manager quit to go back to school and the place went downhill fast. As I said, everyone working there hated the owner, except the assed manager who had quit about a month before this for a new job. As soon as this happened, I started looking for a new job even though I hated changing jobs. So did a number of others. Everyone was loyal to the manager, nobody to the owner. I took a supervisor job at a nearby restaurant and never looked back. I'm told by some coworkers who are still there that it became difficult to get through the day without me and the manager there, and we lost lots of sales for over a year before they started picking up again. The next one is an entitled people story. I have a 16-year-old friend who I've known for about 4 years from when I lived in Canada. We're both 16 now. I moved back to Korea about 2 years ago, so I haven't really seen her since then. As time went by, we kind of ran out of things to talk about. These days I've been really busy studying because I'm preparing to take Korea's university entrance exam, so I don't have much time to contact her. Even though I've been busy, I still think about her a lot. Whenever studying gets hard, I remind myself that I want to see her again someday, and that gives me strength. But she started having issues with me. She told me I was lying about studying and just pretending to study while actually playing games. That really hurt me because I am working hard just for her. I'm trying to improve myself for both her and me, so hearing things like, "You don't even study," or "Why do you lie about studying?" made me so angry. How could she say that to someone who's genuinely studying for their future? On top of that, she talks to me like she's trying to teach me or prove me wrong all the time. Whenever I say something slightly off, she literally asks AI if I'm wrong and then mocks me about it. That made me lose so much respect for her. Then there was the catfish thing. I rarely post selfies, maybe once or twice a month on Instagram stories. One day she saw my photo and called me a catfish, saying that I looked totally different in real life. I was furious, but I held it in and just left her on scene. She also got mad at me for not posting selfies on Snapchat anymore. I used to post my face for the Snapchat streak, but lately I just send random pictures like my wall, my figurines, or some drawings because I don't feel like taking selfies every day. Then she got angry and said, "Why don't you post your face anymore? You're pretty, why not show it?" Like what? Whether I post my selfie or not is my choice. It's not something to get mad about. And honestly, she treats me like her emotional trash can. Whenever she fights with her boyfriend, parents, or friends, she dumps everything on me. I can listen sometimes, of course, but it became too much. She always wanted me to take her side and agree with her, even when she was clearly wrong. She'd say things like, "Right, I'm not wrong, right?" and basically force me to say yes. People have limits, and she never seems to notice. She dumps all her problems on me almost every day, and I always have to comfort and calm her down every time when she tells me her problems. If I didn't answer her calls, she'd say I was avoiding her or being a bad friend. But when we did talk, it'd last for 3 to 5 hours. I barely had time for myself or my studies because of that. When I said I needed to hang up, she'd say 20 more minutes and keep dragging it out. Sometimes it even lasted 10 hours, and if I ever tried to set up a boundary, she would give me attitude and make me feel bad for it. One time I told her I couldn't talk because my teeth were hurting. I'm wearing Invisalign, but I hadn't worn it for 4 days and my teeth were really sore. I just said, "I can't talk today, my teeth hurt so much." Instead of showing any sympathy, she immediately started talking about herself like, "Oh, I had 2 wisdom teeth removed once I just got 8 needles into my jawbone and haven't been able to eat properly because they broke my teeth with a drill and pulled them out." And went on and on about how she went through surgery and how painful her experience was. It felt like my pain didn't even matter. After a while, I started listening to her less. Not because I didn't care, but because it was just emotionally draining. Then something happened. She sent a reel about advertised bait to one of her friends, and that friend said it looked fake. She started teasing that friend, saying things like, "You're wrong, you don't know anything," the same way she'd treat me before. So I said gently, "I kinda thought the same thing too. It might be a bait ad." Suddenly she got mad and said, "Why are you taking her side? You never take mine, then I won't take your side either." Recently she started bad-mouthing that same friend again and I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, "You know in life people lose friends and make new ones. You just have to learn from it and move on. I don't think I can help with this anymore, so please stop talking to me about her."
She said, "Okay, I get it. If you ever have anything hard going on, I won't listen to you too." But the very next day, my hamster, who I really, really loved, got very sick. She had cysts in her uterus, and even after surgery, she developed sepsis. She was dying. I told my friend that, and she said, "Oof, you wasted your money on surgery." I was absolutely furious. I yelled at her, "Are you ducking insane? Why would you say something like that about my one and only pet, basically a member of my family?" I was crying because my hamster was dying, and she replied, "Just buy another hamster." And she said, "It's a fricking hamster." I couldn't believe it how she talked to me like this. I asked why she'd say something so cruel, and she said, "Well, you didn't take my side before either. Remember when you said that's just how life goes? I'm saying the same thing now." That was it for me. I blocked her and ended our friendship. Even after that, she never apologized. I told her, "What you're going through and what I'm going through are not the same. When someone loses a life, even a small one, what you should do is comfort them, not mock them." But she still blamed me. So now I'm just left wondering, was it really my fault for not listening to her problems all the time? I mean, I know it's normal to listen to a friend sometimes, but constantly hearing about someone else's personal struggles and private issues until I'm completely drained, this is very exhausting. I'm posting this for my sister as she can't post yet. She's going through a hard time and said that she needed some opinions on her situation. Thank you. The next one is an entitled parent story. Hi, I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I've spent 28 years of my life living with my parents, both of whom have classic narcissistic personalities. For the first 26 years, I didn't even know that what I was experiencing was abuse. I thought it was normal being blamed for everything, constantly criticized, emotionally crushed, and made to feel like I was the problem. I was anxious, depressed, and lost. Then, around age 26, I stumbled upon the concept of narcissistic abuse online, and suddenly, everything clicked. That was the turning point. From there, I began my healing journey learning about boundaries, gray rocking, detachment, rebuilding confidence, and working on my inner self. I was proud of the progress I was making, even while still living with them for a couple more years. I minimized contact, stayed emotionally distant, and truly began to reclaim my sense of self. Then, at 28, I met my now husband. Initially, things seemed great. Before marriage, I was honest with him. I told him everything about my past, my triggers, and how I grew up in a highly toxic home. He seemed accepting and understanding at the time, and I thought, finally someone who gets it. But that supposed acceptance turned out to be indifference. He didn't really care, he just wanted to get married. From literally the second day of our marriage, his emotional absence was shocking. No connection, no effort, no communication, nothing. I was constantly the one initiating conversations, planning dates, trying to make things work, while he treated me like I was asking for too much just by wanting his time or affection. And that wasn't even the worst of it. He made terrible financial decisions, took loans to repay other loans, and his business crashed. He never took accountability or felt remorse. Eventually, he even started stealing my gold jewelry to pay off debts. I found out that he'd taken multiple loans under my name, I don't even know how many. I was devastated. Meanwhile, my parents found out about the financial mess because some bank representatives showed up at their house. Now they're suddenly concerned and want to intervene, talk to my husband's relatives, help me, and fix things. But here's the thing, I know their pattern. They've always needed a supply. When I was younger, I was the scapegoat, and my younger sister was the golden child. They used to abuse and manipulate my father's side of the family until that family completely cut them off. Then they turned to me. When I got married and left home, they turned to my sister, who eventually became depressed and had to move out to another city for her own sanity. Now that my sister is gone, they have no one left, no supply. And I'm convinced they're looking to pull me back in to use my marital issues as a convenient excuse to re-enter my life and regain control. And honestly, this thought makes my blood boil, because I know what's coming. They'll act concerned, pretend to help, manipulate everyone involved, and before I know it, I'll be trapped again, emotionally destroyed, back in their house, back in that toxic dynamic. Lately, I've been feeling this uncontrollable urge to tell them everything to their face, to call them out, to tell them exactly what kind of parents they've been, to expose their motives, and to finally say, I see through you now, and I'm not falling for this again. I've held back my entire life because it was never physically safe to speak up. My father used to verbally abuse me for hours, standing in front of me for 2-3 hours, hurling the most degrading insults and sometimes getting physically violent. But now, I live far away, thousands of kilometers away, and I'm physically safe for the first time. So, I want to ask, is it worth it to confront narcissistic parents once and for all? Should I tell them what I know and let out everything that's been boiling inside me?
Or should I stay silent and protect my peace, knowing that confronting them will only feed their need for drama and control? Part of me wants to show them that I see through every move they make, that I'm no longer the scared little girl they used to break down. Also, there's another layer. If they start interfering in my marriage, my husband might finally see that he can't take me for granted anymore. But that could come at a heavy cost too, because they can destroy lives and relationships when they want to. I'm torn between finally standing up for myself and protecting my peace. Any advice, strategies, or even shared experiences would mean the world to me. Anyway, thank you for watching.